You ever enter a place and feel like you've become invisible, not in some grand, metaphysical sense where we're just stardust in a boundless universe, but literally you're standing right there, breathing and blinking, yet somehow you do not exist? That was precisely the vibe this afternoon. His name was Bradley Yates, 47 years old, successful beyond measure, and in this odd moment, downright invisible. The twist. This wasn't any old hotel. No, this was one of the flagship properties in the luxurious chain he had built from the ground up. One of those five-star we do everything but tuck you in spots, where a one-night rate costs more than many people's rent. And yet, there he stood at the front desk, waiting for even a hint of acknowledgement, like some uninvited drifter who just wandered in. This wasn't some casual stop, either. Bradley had received repeated complaints, not just one or two, but a solid stream, all pointing to this particular property. Guests claiming they were treated like afterthoughts, staff rumored to have outrageous attitudes, and mysterious unavailability of rooms whenever certain customers tried to reserve. He could have handled this the usual way, calling the manager, scheduling an internal audit, throwing official lingo at the issue, and hoping it resolved. But Bradley was no fool. He knew that problems of this nature never just poofed away. They had to be confronted up close. So here he was, incognito, no designer suit, no limousine, no retinue looking like any average traveler rolling in for a night stay. Only then did he get a real taste of his own world-class service. The front desk was staffed or womaned, more accurately by a blonde 20-something named Kate, whose entire demeanor shrieked, "I am absolutely not paid enough to deal with you." She sat leaning back, phone in hand, tapping or scrolling or whatever it is people do to actively avoid acknowledging another human. Bradley waited, cleared his throat, no response. Tapped the desk, still no bite. Finally, he said, "Excuse me?" Kate exhaled an audible sigh, the kind you give someone who interrupts you while you're busy, doing precisely nothing. Slowly, painfully, she dragged her gaze up to meet his, blinking like he'd just materialized out of nowhere. "Yeah, that was it. Not welcome to our lovely hotel. Or how may I help you?" Just yeah, as though he was a colossal inconvenience. Bradley kept his tone level. "I have a reservation," he said. "Name's Bradley Yates." Kate scrunched her face, as if his request was making her entire day crumble. She spun around to her computer, tapped the keyboard with all the energy of a heavily medicated sloth, and mumbled, "Yeah, no. Not seeing that." Bradley lifted an eyebrow. "You sure about that?" She didn't even look up. Instead, she tossed her phone aside, typed in slow motion for a couple more seconds, then shrugged. "Pretty sure." And with that, she returned to her phone, like the conversation was finished. Right there, he knew. This wasn't a computer glitch. This was deliberate. She'd taken one look at him and decided he wasn't worth her time. With a measured sigh, Bradley tried once more. Check again. Kate rolled her eyes, but half-heartedly tapped her keyboard. "Nope, definitely not here." "Sorry," she said, in a tone suggesting she was anything but sorry. "System doesn't lie." Bradley felt his patience wane. "Neither does my email confirmation." He slid out his phone, displaying the booking. She barely gave a glance. "Well, maybe you messed up her dates. Happens all the time." Bradley inhaled slowly. "Oh, I messed up." She delivered a condescending shrug. "Easily done. Could be the wrong location, or maybe you typed it in wrong." He bit back a retort. "And if I didn't type anything wrong? If my reservation is right here, at this hotel, on this day?" She shrugged again, eyes drifting to her phone. "Guess that means the system glitched," she intoned, sounding about as genuine as a plastic cactus. But Bradley knew the system. It didn't glitch randomly, not in that way. People cause glitches, and her behavior confirmed this. He'd witnessed it too often. Certain folks got minimal courtesy, minimal help. Others got top-tier treatment and system corrections for any error. He usually let such behavior slide, but not today. He whipped out his second phone, the one that had admin privileges, giving him direct access to the chain's internal booking software. Typed in a quick set of credentials, and right there was his reservation, booked and confirmed. Then Purely out of curiosity, he accessed the logs. Sure enough, it showed. Reservation manually deleted. By who? Kate, front desk clerk. Bingo. Bradley eyed her name tag, a small grin forming at the corner of his mouth. So, Kate was feeling bold today, was she? Perfect. He drew a calming breath, controlling the urge to blow up on the spot. Instead, he fixed his gaze on her. Tell me something, Kate, is it? She flicked her gaze up. Yeah, what? His voice dropped. What happens when you delete a guest reservation? She gave him a half-hearted snort. It's removed from the system? Not that complicated. Bradley shrugged. And who can do that? She frowned. Front desk staff, I guess. Including me. Why? You won the grand tour of our software. He turned his phone around, so she could see the log displaying her own name as the one who erased the booking. Her eyes flickered, face blanching as she registered the significance. Wait, I didn't. Don't, Kate. The way she cringed was priceless. See here? Your username, next to my deleted reservation. So, kindly explain why the hell you thought it was okay to remove my booking. Kate opened and closed her mouth, but words failed. She looked as though she might vanish into the floor. Bradley had to resist a laugh. Oh, this is going to be a night to remember, he murmured under his breath. Bradley Yates had seen a whole lot in his life, but this was new. He stared at Kate, who was trying not to look like she'd just witnessed the apocalypse. He might have almost pitted her almost, but not quite. She alone dug this hole, and now she'd have to climb out. She looked at the phone screen, possibly thinking she could undo her sabotage, but it was far too late. I don't know where she started weakly. He cut in, sharper than before. Don't try to spin this. Kate pressed her lips together, silent for once. Bradley took a step back, exhaling. He felt his temper flaring, but needed to be methodical instead. A meltdown in the middle of the lobby? That wouldn't solve anything. No, he needed to handle this strategically. He leaned an elbow on the counter, plastering a controlled smile. Here's how this will go, Kate, he said softly. She swallowed. Okay, you'll find me a room. Right now. She hesitated, but under his unyielding stare, she began typing with trembling fingertips until she found a vacant room. She printed a key card and slid it across the counter, not meeting his gaze. Here you are, sir. He didn't immediately pick it up. Which room is it? She cleared her throat. Air 1528. He sighed inwardly. The worst room at this property, next to the freight elevator, sharing a wall with maintenance, with a scenic view of the dumpsters. He knew each floor plan in excruciating detail. She was being petty, hoping he'd just vanish. He gave her a thin smile. So, that's the game we're playing? I suppose I look gullible to you, yeah? She flinched. I know I didn't. Then explain why you'd assign me the worst room in the entire building? No response. Only the hush of a lobby that had grown super quiet. Various guests sat on the fancy couches, feigning disinterest but secretly all ears. A bellman in the corner stared at the floor, adjusting his uniform to avoid meeting Bradley's eye. Finally, Bradley picked up the key. Thanks for your top-notch service, Kate. Then he turned toward the elevators and vanished. But not for long, oh no. This was only the opening act. In the privacy of his assigned room, Bradley yanked out his laptop. This was his empire, and if something like this was going down, it demanded a thorough look. Kate's outrageous behavior was the tip of the iceberg. He had to see how deep the rot went. First, he poured through internal records, staff performance logs, guest complaints, management notes, anything relevant to this hotel. And there it was, popping up repeatedly. Kate. Over and over, with scathing remarks. Instances where she refused to accommodate guests, possible racism concerns, phone calls documented about her rudeness. Then, just as he suspected, he saw how many times the manager had neglected to discipline her. The manager's name was Richard Byrne, a man who, from the looks of it, shrank from confrontation, maybe hoping problems would vanish on their own. Classic. She had free rein to keep messing up because no one had the backbone to act. Enough of that. Bradley snapped his laptop closed, marched back to the lobby. Kate was still at her station, fiddling nervously. She glanced up, flickers of anxiety crossing her features. He didn't speak to her, not yet. Instead, he made a beeline for the manager's office, ignoring the staff who gazed at him warily. Without so much as a knock, he pushed the door open. Richard Byrne, mid-40s with an eye peaked in college vibe, looked up from behind his desk, eyes widening. "Mr. Yates, I had no idea you were visiting." Bradley shut the door gently, leaning against it. "Spare me the flattery. Richard, we need to talk." Richard gulped. "Of course. What's the problem? I can fix." "Cut the bull," Bradley growled. "Are you aware one of your front desk employees just deleted my reservation and tried to brush me off?" Richard's face went pale. "I know. Are you serious? Who was it?" Bradley smirked. "Take a guess." Richard cringed. Kate." "Bingo," Bradley said icily. "So, how long has she been a problem?" Richard's Adam's apple bobbed. "We've had minor issues. Some complaints. But I plan on giving her more training." Bradley snorted. "Training? That's your big plan? Let me tell you what's about to happen." Richard looked like he might faint. Bradley let out a harsh breath. "You're going to march out there, and you're going to fire her. Right now. Publicly." Richard paled further. "Why me now? In front of everyone?" Bradley finished. "You should have done it a long time ago." Richard grimaced, but realized he had zero wiggle room. "Yes, Mr. Yates," he muttered, edging past Bradley to the door. Bradley followed, somewhat amused but also steeled for what was to come. 2:51 2 minutes later, the entire lobby fell silent as Richard Byrne approached Kate at the front desk, looking terrified, and cleared his throat. Kate blinked, suspicion flickering across her face. "Richard? Something wrong?" Kate, he croaked. "I'm afraid I have to let you go." Her mouth dropped open. "What?" He pressed on, voice quavering. "Due to multiple policy violations and your recent behavior, I have no choice." She scrambled to defend herself, claiming it was a misunderstanding, that the system glitched, that the hotel was overbooked. Didn't matter. Richard looked like a man walking to his funeral. "I'm sorry. You're terminated effectively immediately." She stared, silent shock turning to fury. Her gaze darted to Bradley, who stood off to the side, arms folded. She recognized the satisfaction glinting in his eyes, but she still had no clue who he truly was. She stormed off, tears brimming, leaving a hush behind. Bradley watched her exit, feeling a sense of triumph and resolution, but, ironically, not total satisfaction. Because firing one employee wouldn't solve systemic issues. He wasn't just out for revenge, he wanted to fix his domain. Richard turned to him, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Well, that's done, sir." Bradley snorted. "No, Richard. I did that. You just mumbled a few words." Richard opened his mouth to protest, but Bradley raised a hand. "Let me guess. I could fire you too, for letting this place slip?" The manager's face twisted in worry. "Mr. Yates, I promise I can rectify everything." Bradley shook his head. "I'll handle it. You just stand by." Then he strolled away, noticing the uneasy stares from staffers. He pivoted to the front desk, addressing the remaining clerks, who froze like deer in headlights. "Listen up. Things are about to change around here," he announced. Fast. A younger receptionist, maybe in his early 20s, nodded like his life depended on it. "Yes, sir, do you work for corporate?" Bradley gave a predatory grin. "Something like that." He picked up the hotel phone, keyed in a direct line. "This is Yates," he said. "Shut this entire property down for an immediate audit. Every guest is comped, every complaint investigated, every employee reevaluated. Anyone not pulling their weight is gone. Right away." Staffers froze, wide-eyed. One woman gasped. That young clerk paled, evidently realizing the gravity of the moment. Richard, lurking behind, looked like he might collapse. Bradley hung up, slipping the phone away with a businesslike nod. "And in case you're wondering, yes, I'm that Bradley Yates." An audible hush. One or two people looked like they might physically recoil. Richard wore the expression of a condemned man. Adjusting his jacket, Bradley concluded, "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a hotel to fix." And with that final line, he walked toward the elevators, leaving a silent, stunned crowd in his wake. Once he was inside the elevator, he could practically feel the shock reverberating behind him in the lobby. He half smiled, picturing the staff's faces as they realized they'd just messed with the chain's founder and CEO. The doors slid shut. He tapped the button for his suite and leaned against the wall, letting himself revel in the moment. If the rest of the staff was anything like Kate, then big changes were overdue. When he stepped into his assigned suite, his phone practically vibrated off the hook. Calls from corporate, from board members, from some of his regional directors. Likely, Richard was already trying to save face. Bradley let it ring, ignoring them all. Let them sweat, and guess how he planned to handle this fiasco. He booted up his laptop again, pulling up the staff roster. First item on the docket: termination for Kate in black and white. Next step: a final warning for Richard Byrne. Actually, it might be more of a pink slip. The man let an avalanche of guest complaints slide without taking action. He couldn't manage a lemonade stand, let alone one of Bradley's prized hotels. Bradley turned to the database of guest grievances. Guest after guest had endured condescension, refusal of help, or suspicious booking errors. Some were subtly discriminatory, some blatant. Not only was that morally infuriating, it was a brand killer. So he took personal pride in addressing each complaint. Full refunds, upgraded VIP status, personal apology letters courtesy of Bradley Yates himself. Because that's how you do business if you want your empire to last. A knock came at his door. Bradley checked the peephole to see Richard fidgeting like a nervous schoolboy. Opening the door, Bradley gave him a cold stare. Something else? Richard's voice quivered. "Mr. Yates, I know you could fire me. But I can fix this, just give me the chance." Bradley leaned on the doorframe, arms folded. "Why'd you let this place descend into chaos in the first place?" Richard drooped his shoulders. "I thought I could handle it. I didn't want conflict. But I see now how big the problem is," and Bradley's voice sliced through the explanation. "That's the difference between a leader and an excuse maker. A real manager sees a problem and addresses it before it rots the entire property. You look the other way." Richard swallowed, tears edging into his eyes. "I promise I'll do better, sir. Please let me prove it." For a moment, Bradley weighed the sincerity. He exhaled softly. "The moment you let your staff degrade our customers, you cross the line. But I'll give you a 1-week reprieve. If you can't show me tangible improvements, you're out. Understood?" Richard nodded, so furiously his neck might snap. "Yes, sir, absolutely." Bradley's expression remained dispassionate. "Then get out there and start taking care of guests properly, because I'll be back very soon." Richard rushed off, relief mingling with fear. Bradley closed the door, returning to his tasks. If Richard wasted this second chance, he'd be unemployed by Monday. No more half measures in Bradley Yates's empire. Sometime later, Bradley switched off his laptop, satisfied with the immediate fixes. Sure, the entire property had to be shut down for a thorough rework, but it was worth it. He stepped onto the balcony, gazing at the city skyline. He built this business so guests would feel welcomed and pampered, not disrespected. Kate was only a symptom of a broader problem: apathy, prejudice, and incompetent leadership. But as he surveyed the city lights, Bradley felt a sense of calm. He'd confronted the issue head-on. He'd remove any staff who tarnished his brand. That was the mission. If he had to personally investigate more of his own hotels, so be it. He'd walk in as any normal guest and flush out these problems one at a time. In the morning, he'd call a meeting with the entire team, ensuring that any future Kates would either learn to treat customers with decency or find employment elsewhere. The brand he created stood for a promise of excellence, and no short-sighted bigot was going to sabotage that. He took one last look at the city below, night breeze ruffling his hair, and gave a small grin. Justice done, or at least started. Next time a front desk clerk dared to discriminate or treat someone like they didn't belong, they'd think twice, because now everyone remembered exactly who owns the place. And with that, Bradley stepped back inside, already planning tomorrow's overhaul, bracing for the avalanche of calls from internal staff, media, and more. Let them come. He had an empire to protect, and he'd do it with a smile, now that the courtesy challenge front desk clerk was gone for good.